AM 1460 WXBR, Peter Czymbor here with you on this Friday morning. Later on this month, Thursday, May 30th, south of where we are in Providence at the Feet Ballroom, and Friday, May 31st, north of where we are at the Hampton Beach Casino in Hampton, New Hampshire, Buckcherry takes the stage, and joining us now to talk about it is guitarist for Buckcherry, Keith Nelson. Keith, thank you so much for joining us here on this Friday morning.
It's my pleasure. Good to be on your show, my man.
Keith, I have to say, of all the modern-day bands that exist in the realm of rock and roll today, Buckcherry, from an outsider's perspective, seems like it would be the funnest band to be a part of on the road. Is that, in fact, the case?
It's pretty fun, I got to say. We are very lucky. A lot of bands, you hear stories about guys not getting along and a lot of internal tension, but really, there's none of that in this outfit. We all love being around each other. We're all good friends. We hang out when there's not stuff to do that's work-related, and we have a really good time.
You guys just released your 6th record, Confessions, earlier this year. Congratulations on that. It's interesting to say that you guys are on your 6th album at this point, because there was a period of time where you sort of said, remember a few years ago there was this band Buckcherry? You came and went pretty quick, then you came back. You're a band that had more or less 2 eras, I would say. There's the lit-up era of 99 to the early 2000s, and the Crazy Bitch era of 2005 until present. Describe the difference between the 2 eras of Buckcherry, and what exactly happened in the interim that led to you guys sort of going away for a while?
Well, the first era that you're referring to, that was really, a couple of guys in Hollywood dreaming about having a record deal and having their dreams come true, and then all the ensuing revelations after that. I think that, when you're growing up and you're in bands and you're writing songs and you're working a day job, you think that the goal is to get a record deal. And we did get a record deal, and we had no idea what that meant. What that really meant was that there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of other people's opinions started to enter the equation other than just the guys in the band, it's a business, and when you sign a record deal, you basically enter into a partnership with a corporation, and that was something that we really hadn't anticipated. So that's kind of my memories of that first wave. Some guys get in bands because they want to be famous and they want to get chicks and they think it's a way to party, and other people get into bands because they want to make music and it's important to them. And so we had a few guys fall by the wayside, and ultimately it was Josh and I left with, holding it up, and it just kind of became time for us to take a break. So that's kind of why the break happened. And then in 2005, Josh and I had some conversations around some personal stuff that was going on with me, and he called me up, and that's kind of how the second wave of the band started. So the 5 guys that you see now, myself and Josh and the 3 other guys, those 3 other guys were actually friends of ours, and it was really important for us to make sure that we had guys in the band that were friends that we got along with, because we knew how much time we were going to be spending with them, and that was really the guiding the guiding factor. It just so happened that they all happened to be phenomenal musicians, so we lucked out on that one.
I don't want to seem insensitive in the way that I phrase this question to those former members of the band, but was it sort of a process of weeding out the weak who could handle the lifestyle of being in a successful rock and roll band from era 1 to era 2?
No, those guys had actually left the band. So at a certain point, I think the bass player had left first, and then the other guitar player and the drummer left kind of simultaneously as it was kind of crumbling. And, some of those guys have gone on to pursue music, and some of those other guys have gone on to pursue things outside of music. I'm not really in touch with them. I'm not going to be the guy that sits there and calls them weak. I just think that, being in a band and staying committed and interacting and getting along with people, it takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice. Some guys are willing to do that, and some guys aren't.
Once again, we're chatting with Keith Nelson of Buckcherry here on WXBR on this Friday morning. 2 area shows, May 30th in Providence and May 31st in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. They have a new album out called Confessions. Both times you guys really emerged and then re-emerged. It seemed to come out of nowhere. In 99, when you guys came out with Lit Up, that was a down and dirty rock and roll record that came out amidst a lot of hip-hop, metal, and things of that nature. And then in 2005, Crazy Bitch just came out of nowhere like a punch to the face, like, wow, Buckcherry's back, almost like you had never left to begin with. Both times, did it ever catch you by surprise, how successful it became?
I wasn't really caught that much by surprise on the first record, because it seemed like we had a lot of momentum in the corporate structure behind us, and signed to a big record deal at a big record label with a lot of pressure to succeed. The biggest surprise, I got to say, was the success of the 15 record. We made that record. It's no secret. We made that record in 2 weeks because we didn't have any money, and I produced the record because we didn't have any money to pay a producer, and I thought I could do the job. And Crazy Bitch was a song that was written in 2002 that was sitting there as a demo for like 3 years, and we weren't even going to put it on the record. At the very last moment, we learned it like right before the pre-production sessions ended, before we went into record, just so we had that song. And we were all poised to release Next to You as the first single off the record. And we did a little internet, just like we were going to do a little internet video and just put it on our MySpace page. That's when MySpace was
it's very 2005, Keith.
Exactly. We were going to put it on our MySpace page, and just because of a reintroduction, and then it took off. Radio stations started to rip the song off of the or upload or whatever, rip it off of the MySpace page and start playing on the radio. So I quickly flew home and did a single edit where I took the F word out of the song, and overnight, within like a month or two, 250,000 copies of that record were sold. And it's the kind of phenomenon that you don't really, I don't know, most bands don't even get to experience it. And we were sitting there watching it happen. It was really crazy. We were on an independent label. We made that record for no money. We did it in 2 weeks. And that was the bigger surprise, by far.
And it was just a demo that had been lying around that you never had any indication would even be on your album, ultimately, let alone be a hit, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we played that song for a producer back in 2002, and he said, well, it's a cool song, but you got to change the lyrics. You're never going to get that played on the radio. And,
little did he know.
So, well, and I ran into him, I think, when that song hit 1 million downloads, and I said, I just want to let you know that, we did okay with it, but thanks anyway.
Sometimes you have fans come up to you at shows and say, I can relate to your music. Your two biggest songs are about cocaine and sex. I hope you're having more of the latter than the former. What do people say to you in relation to your music? Or are they just there to have a good time?
There is a really large element of our audience that's there to have a good time. And we are so happy that people are willing to kind of put aside their troubles and be entertained. That's really what we're here for. But, if you look at all of our records, there's always been more introspective moments, whether it's a song like Check Your Head from the first record or something like You off of the Time Bomb record. There's always been that element of songs with us. It's been important for us to have that balance, even though the Lit Ups and the Crazy Bitches tend to get a little bit more airplay and a little bit more attention. So when someone comes up and they tell us how a song got them through a hard time, that actually means more than somebody that, had their first cocaine experience with Lit Up, believe it or not.
I would hope so. Once again, we're chatting with Keith Nelson of Buckcherry here on WXBR Boston. During that time, when Buckcherry sort of went through their hiatus, you and Josh Todd stayed connected, playing together. Did you play in his solo band that actually did tour for a little while in that off period?
I did not. I took that time to, I kind of walked away from being in a band. I was really over it at that point. It was such a struggle for so many years to kind of keep a band afloat that I was really happy to just let it all go. And I actually started working in recording studios in LA and just trying to learn as much as I could about the record-making process, because I figured that was the next phase of my life.
Well, I'm sure that paid off when you ultimately did produce your own album.
And yeah, now I own my own studio, and we've done the last 3 records at my place, and I've produced the records. So I think it was time well invested for me.
One thing that was well publicized during the hiatus of Buckcherry was that you and Josh Todd, the singer for Buckcherry, had gotten together with former members of Guns N' Roses, and it almost seemed for a time period that you guys would be a part of a project which ultimately became Velvet Revolver. At the time, it really had no name. Was there any truth to that, and what happened with that? Because ultimately it was Scott Weiland singing and just the former guys from Guns N' Roses in the band.
Yeah, I mean, it was very real. It all started off with a phone call from Slash about doing a benefit for Randy Castillo, the famous drummer that had passed away. And he asked if
He worked
Josh
with Ozzy Osbourne, for those who don't know.
Yeah, and he was also in Motley Crue. And Slash and I have a really good mutual friend at the time, and he got a hold of me, and he said, "You guys want to come do this benefit show? Let's have a few rehearsals. We'll do a few Guns tunes and have some fun." And we were like, "Sure, what the heck?" We were still writing songs because we thought we were, there was going to be a third Buckcherry record. So we went and had a rehearsal, went and did the show, and man, it was so much fun to play those two rehearsals in that show that I said to Duff, I said, we should do this as a band. And he said, go talk to Slash. So I went and talked to Slash, and I said, what do you think? And he's like, sure, let's give it a shot. And we basically rehearsed for 2 months. And, for whatever reason, it didn't seem like it was going to work out that way. And those guys went their way, and Josh went and made a solo record. And I basically tapped out at that point and said, I'm just going to, I'm going to come off the road. I had a young child, and it was time for me to just be home. And I've always been interested in things around the studio, so I just thought it was a good opportunity.
It almost seemed too perfect that you guys would be teaming up with Guns N' Roses or former members of Guns N' Roses to form a band, because you guys are very much carrying the torch of that good old hard rock and roll a la Guns N' Roses and bands like AC/DC. Was there ever any explanation given as to why it didn't work, or the whole thing just fizzle out naturally?
I think that those guys thought that maybe the chemistry wasn't right, or something about it wasn't exactly what they were hearing in their head, and and everyone's entitled to their opinion, and everyone kind of gets what they deserve in the end. And there's certainly no bad blood. Looking back now, I think I was grateful to be a part of that, and I'm not sad that it worked out the way it did. I love my band. I love what's going on now, and I think that's all that really matters.
When Velvet Revolver came out, they lasted 2 albums, 2 very successful and very good albums. Was there anything you ever heard on there where you said, "Wait a minute, that's from our rehearsal sessions. I was a part of the creation of that," or no, was it totally different with Scott Weiland in the picture?
No, I have a writing credit on the first record.
Oh, you do?
They were, yeah, and that it was good to be acknowledged for that. But it's not really something that once that situation was over, I had moved on. I wasn't really looking back.
Once again, we're chatting with Keith Nelson of Buckcherry here on WXBR. Buckcherry plays south of us Thursday, May 30th in Providence at the Feet Ballroom. North of us Friday, May the 31st at the Hampton Beach Casino in Hampton, New Hampshire. Keith, tell us about Buckcherry's new album, Confessions. You guys got the single Gluttony out. What separates this album from the 5 previous Buckcherry releases?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's the first time we ever made a record and had any kind of concept for what it would be. Josh and I had spoken many times about doing a 7-song EP based on the 7 Deadly Sins, and that kind of evolved into Josh writing a screenplay. Josh was already working on a screenplay loosely based on his life, so we thought it would be cool to have a story to go with it. So that evolved into the story that went along with it, and then the album corresponds to the story, and the story corresponds to the album, and they work really well together. Taking that further, Josh took that screenplay to a director, and they've worked up a real screenplay, complete with casting and locations and stuff. So we're really hoping at some point to get the movie made that corresponds to the record.
Now, have these been major motion picture studios or independent organizations, or is this something that would actually be released in theaters or direct to DVD release, or is that even too early to foresee what it potentially could be?
I think it's too early to see, but my guess would be, my most educated guess would be, that it would be a short film done independently, and at this point probably taken direct to our fan base as opposed to released through a movie distributor.
You guys have been around since the late 90s. You're still here circa 2013. When you guys first came out in 99, people were still going to record stores and buying CDs. Now everyone's downloading iTunes and whatnot. How much has the music industry changed since you guys have been a part of it on a major level about 15 years ago?
I mean, so much, exponentially. I mean, to even try and map out the changes is ridiculous. I can tell you that the first record was done on cassette, if that means anything. But wasn't on vinyl, believe it or not. And, vinyl is really coming back into popularity. I still have all the vinyl from growing up, and so that's nice to see that vinyl is actually making a resurgence. People are actually starting to care what the music actually sounds like again. So that's fun.
And they say that vinyl actually sounds better as far as forms of getting music than, CDs or digital file through your computer, right?
Well, I mean, it's all a matter of preference and taste. I mean, I like carburetors on my motorcycles, and I like vinyl records. Some people think that fuel injection and digital is the way to go, and they're, I can't argue that. I know what I like to hear,
Once again, we're chatting with Keith Nelson of Buckcherry here on WXBR. 2 area shows, Thursday, May 30th at the Feet Ballroom in Providence, Friday, May 31st at the Hampton Beach Casino in Hampton, New Hampshire. They have a new album out called Confessions. Your show, May the 31st at the Hampton Beach Casino in New Hampshire. One thing that out-of-towners never know is that the Hampton Beach Casino actually isn't a casino. So if you're looking to gamble, Keith, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. There's no blackjack at the Hampton Beach Casino. I'm sure you'll find things to occupy yourself nevertheless.
Being in a rock and roll band every day is a gamble, so I don't need a casino.
What advice do you have for young bands coming up in this day and age? You guys, in late 99, had to get the word out through radio airplay and touring. Bands now they certainly have more options at their disposal with the advent of social media and the exponential growth of the internet. Since then, what advice do you have for bands coming up nowadays to get their message out, to get their music out?
Well, I mean, there's so many options. People have so many options now. There was a time when we first came up that if you didn't get signed to a major record label, no one was going to hear your music. Now, all you need is a Facebook page and people can hear your music. I think most importantly, my advice would be to not follow trends, and just do what you believe in. Stick to what you believe in, because that really is the way you kind of make your mark for yourself.
Keith, before I let you go, one show I've always wanted to ask you about that Buckcherry was a part of early on in the band's commercial success was you guys played Woodstock 99. Little before things got really crazy over that 3-day weekend. What was that experience like playing to 6-figure plus crowds?
I mean, it was insane. We'd never had anything like that before. So to walk out there was really overwhelming. I remember that day very vividly because Josh and I had actually met James Brown as we were walking up to the stage and had our picture taken with him. So it was pretty special, memorable day.
I'm sure things will be a little bit different in terms of the scenery on the 30th in Providence and the 31st in New Hampshire, but you guys will bring it nevertheless. I almost find shows more fun when you're playing like 1,000-seat theaters as opposed to big arenas and stadiums.
There's definitely more of a connection with the people that are there. Playing to a mass of people is pretty awesome, but playing and looking down and seeing faces and watching people connect is pretty, and there's really no way to describe that. It brings you a lot of joy to be able to do that. It brings me a lot of joy.
Well, Keith, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us here on this Friday morning, chatting with us about your upcoming shows. Once again, that's Keith Nelson from Buckcherry. He'll be playing Thursday, May 30th in Providence at the Feet Ballroom, Friday, May 31st at the Hampton Beach Casino in New Hampshire. Before I let you go, Keith, any final words for our listeners here on this Friday morning?
Well, I'm a big Red Sox fan, so all I really have to say is go Red Sox.
Well, you know what? I don't think that is going to go over poorly with our audience at all.
Right on. Thanks. I appreciate it, Peter.
Thank you so much. That's Keith Nelson of Buckcherry joining us here on WXBR. We'll step aside for a quick breather. We'll be back with more of the program after this.